Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 1st, 2026 meeting of the Riders Advisory Council. I'm your chair, Cole Stout, and I will go ahead and call this meeting to order and ask John to please call the roll.
All right, good evening. Chair Stout,
Here.
Vice Chair Siddiqui, Vice Chair Wei,
Here.
Solomon Chen. Said he couldn't make it. Matthew Clark,
Here.
Eli Rivera-Franco.
Here.
Thank you. Lucas Oboski,
Here.
Alex Mendelson.
Here.
All right, we can hear you. Brian Meyer,
Here.
Pat Sheehan,
Here.
Thomas Shepard, Irene Stevens,
Here.
Hendy Tefesi,
Here.
and Brandon Wu.
Here.
All right, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, John. And before we go to our next item, I would like to give an opportunity for our new board liaison to do an introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Spring Worth. I serve as the WMATA Board Alternate for the District of Columbia. I currently work at the City Administrator's Office with DC Government, but I worked for about 10 years with the District Department of Transportation. Really happy to be here. Thanks, Cole, for extending the invitation at the last board meeting. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Thank you.
Well, we're really glad to have you. I know the board liaison's always been a great help to me as chair, and to, I think, all of our former chairs will agree that it's a great help in connection to the board to guide our work. So with that, we'll move to item number 2, the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to our agenda? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and consider that approved. The approval of the minutes from our February 4th and March 4th meetings. Do we have February?
No, you just have March, sorry.
Yeah, we just have March, so just the March meeting. Are there any amendments to the March 4th, 2026 meetings? Minutes, excuse me. Seeing none, we'll consider those approved. And we'll move to item number 4, public comment. Do we have any members of the public with us, either online or in person, who would like to share some thoughts with the RAC?
I already gave my comments to Ms. Bell here, so.
Okay. Is there anything you want to
Read them again?
just top level, like the Cliff Notes, maybe?
Let me get this right one. Sure. Yeah, let's see, there's an issue with the people who work at the Chevy Chase branch of the DC Public Library with the timing of the D70, so they want to get that adjusted. There's one bus stop we want moved from. There used to be bus stops in 2 places. We want to move from where it is now to the other place it was. And we want a couple bus stops restored on the D80 and D82. And then the frequency increased for rush hour on the C83. That's it.
We'll take a look at those written comments more closely and appreciate you being with us tonight. I don't think I see anyone online to share public comment. Okay, so then we'll move to item number 5, all-door boarding on Metrobus. And we've got Jewel Bell with us tonight to give us an update there.
Hi, I have a co-partner, so it's Jewel and Moye, so we'll kind of tag team on this. That's a little small, so I'll look on my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. We're moving to system-wide all-door boarding in May to improve speed and reliability. Rear door boarding, rear doors will be open based on customer demand and accessibility needs, not just front door boarding. This supports faster boarding, better accessibility, and more consistent customer experience. We are preparing by providing training to operators, engaging with our unions, and the installment, which has already been done, of equipment on all of the buses. A communications campaign and fair enforcement efforts will reinforce expectations from our customers. Moye?
Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. Some of you might already know this isn't Metro's first foray into doing all-door boarding. Back in December 2023, we launched a demonstration. Then on 7 routes, it's since, consolidated down to 6 with the Better Bus Network redesign, for all-door boarding. And those routes are the A40 and A49 in Virginia, D10 and D1X in Washington, and the P30 and P40 in Maryland. Now, at the time that we did this, we did not have rear door targets on all of our buses, so we had subfleets of buses at the depots that we needed to run those routes. However, just under a year after we launched the demonstration, we completed full fleet installations of all the rear door targets, and pretty quickly found that customers on all sorts of different routes were using the rear doors, not just on those demonstration routes. The other caveat, though, is that customer awareness of it was fairly low. We did some initial public kind of communications in 2023 for it and put stickers on the original demonstration buses, but didn't follow it up once we went full fleet. So we got to about 7% of customers boarding through the rear door, up from 3%, which wasn't quite enough to see an actual reduction in dwell time. However, with expanded communications and pushes towards, actually making sure people are aware that they can do this, we should see that, that dwell time come down and adoption rate go up. And the big question we always get asked for this is, what was the effect on fare evasion? And the answer is that there really wasn't one. Rear door and front door fare evasion remained roughly the same across the frequent service network during the demonstration and up to today, where we last measured in December of this year. Next slide, please. So we did see a little bit of improvement during the demonstration, and we are fairly confident that we're going to continue to see that going forward. Dwell time is increasing at our stops. This is something that, just getting out and writing the system, you can probably see. The big drivers of it are ridership growth on major corridors. We have exceeded pre-pandemic ridership on many routes. Stop consolidation that's making crowds at existing stops get bigger. A large increase in the growth of the ADA ramps on buses, especially since we went to open stroller and allowing people to just roll on, roll off of the buses with them, and increased fare payment as results of MTPD campaigns. One kind of side effect of that is it does take a little bit longer to board if everyone is tapping their card. So we want to try to reduce that. We want to keep buses moving, keep people being able to get on and off quickly, and all-door boarding provides one method of being able to do that.
Okay, and as you can see on this slide, some of our peer agencies are doing all-door boarding, starting with San Francisco, who's been doing this since 2014, and they've definitely saw a reduce in average dwell times per passengers. In New York since 2009, which they've had 40% lower dwell time on routes with all-door boarding in their system. Next slide. As Gabriel mentioned, MTPD is something that someone that we're actually working with, and fare enforcement campaigns are still occurring with the 15 dedicated officers during the peak periods. How we've actually seen an increase in evasions, citations in 2025, and a 10% paid boarding increase from 2024 to 2025. Something that is coming up in August, late August, the 28th of this month, here in the boardroom at LaFont Plaza is a bus town hall where the customers, the bus customers will be allowed to come in and, just communicate their concerns, and we'll share key improvements and initiatives that are underway in bus.
And additionally, we don't just want to be doing enforcement for fare enforcement. We also will try to reverse fare evasion. We also want to try to incentivize it, and part of that is this Metro Wall of Fame campaign that should be launching in May as well. In fact, we have a casting call for it now. We are looking for people who ride frequently, who like the system, and who pay their fares, who can become kind of model, Wall of Famers, to show off to other customers on why it matters to pay your fair share for Metro. So I have these here. I'm happy to hand them out. In fact, we just kind of pass them around, and I can grab them at the end.
And as you can see, that campaign actually starts tomorrow.
I think that's it.
That's it for us.
Awesome, thank you. I will go ahead and open it up to questions from members of the RAC. If you're online, go ahead and raise your hand. Use the feature there, and we'll go ahead and get you in the queue. Yeah, Matthew.
Hi, Mr. Maury and Ms. Bell. Thanks for your time tonight. Just about dwell time, that's the time the bus remains at the stop, from stop to taking off again?
Yep.
I just want to confirm. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Not so much a question, but I think generally the RAC has been pretty supportive and above all door boarding because of the benefits that you've seen. And so we're really, I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think generally we're glad to see the progress here, especially when we see it during commuting hours where the dwell times are quite long because there's a lot of people trying to board the bus. I was asked about this at the board meeting last week, and I used my example of, at 16th and U Streets in the morning, I see 2 or 3 buses come down 16th Street, all full, but probably 20 or 30 people sitting at that stop trying to board the bus, and there's a lot of dwell time. So I think this could help speed up, and people boarding the bus in the back already. So just kind of formalizing that and letting customers know that they don't have to queue up at the front can help with everyone's commute time. But if anyone else has questions or comments, I see William is online.
Yes, thank you, Cole. Just curious that I want to thank the 2 speakers for their presentation. Just curious regarding fare enforcement. Is there a possibility that the driver can somehow, use the onboard cameras to take pictures of the fare evaders? This might be, something that's a little unusual of a question, but I was just wondering about that. Thank you.
So the cameras are constantly recording, and if the operators have issues with people that are constantly fare evading, there is a form that they fill out for MTPD letting them know the area, the bus, the time, the description of the person. MTPD will contact the operator and come out and ride with that operator. And then one of the things that we've also been doing is if we know that there is fare evasion issues along that route, we've been doing what we call fare evasion heights, where we team up with the MTPD, street operations, our division staff, and we're out there helping MTPD and the operator in support.
Well, thank you, ma'am. That's very helpful. I was concerned because I think there's some data that fare evaders cause more crimes and assaults on buses and trains. So that's what I was really concerned with. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Alex.
Thank you. I just wanted to say real quick that as someone who's pushed for more clear communication on overboarding, I'm really happy to see the system-wide enforcement or system-wide implementation coming soon. And thank you guys so much for your presentation. I'm really looking forward to this.
Brandon?
Yeah, echoing Alex, I think one of the big solutions we hope the board would potentially implement from last year's annual report, I believe, was all door boarding. It was great to see that there was board member buy-in and buy-in from staff. So I'm excited to see what's next. And I think this year we also, another pilot that I personally am really interested in is the bus to rail signal light transfer pilot that also was done in 2023. So curious to see if there's future movement on that. I have a question on fare enforcement as well. With regards to Metrolift, my understanding is that when MTPD began the campaigns for fare enforcement, I think before that they were sort of running announcements maybe over the bus PA that informed people that Metrolift was available and there was some outreach. Do we know if that outreach is continuing or increasing as we implement all door boarding to sort of, as you mentioned, when the MTPD operations folks are out there, after they cite someone for fare evasion, are they also potentially handing a pamphlet that's if you're enrolled in SNAP, you should also enroll in Metrolift? Is that outreach being done when enforcement is happening? And not sure if you know the answer to that.
I would prefer to make sure I give you the right answer, so I'll get some clarity on that and I'll provide it back to John to give it back to the team.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lucas.
Yeah, going back to your first slide, I know that it says that operators will open the door when it meets one of those 3 criteria, but will it still be in the training that they will almost always open the rear door? for riders.
So if someone is, what we're trying to do is really stick to these 3 criterias so that way it avoids the customer boarding the back door and the fare evasion from happening. So if we're trained into this, that's what we're going to ask the operators to stick to.
Okay.
Okay.
Eli.
Hi, sorry, excuse the background noise. So I really love this Hall of Fame idea. I was curious if you're considering doing maybe other discount programs as part of the Hall of Fame to kind of highlight those programs, so like a Metro List or a senior discount person to be as kind of like a PSA for those programs as well.
Eli, I think we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. It seems like a distorted audio there. I'm not sure if you're in a loud spot or on headphones or something that might not be working.
I'll type my comment. Sorry.
If you maybe want to drop it in the chat and John can read your question out, that might be a great alternative. While we wait for that, Brian has a room here in the question in the room.
Yes, so I know when someone is evading fares, it's still important for the bus operator to document that someone had stepped on the bus just for data collection purposes and tracking trends for ridership and congestion and things like that. Do we know, regardless of whether they pay, well, obviously if they pay their fare, there's some documentation that someone stepped on, but if they are evading their fare, are we still documenting for people that may exit on the back that, hey, we know that there's someone on the bus because this is a busy route? And kind of to William's point, like, is there cameras, AI technology, like how are we just tracking it from a data collection standpoint?
So as mentioned, but there are automatic passenger counters on the bus as well that track people getting on and off.
Thank you. And just as an addendum, yes, this has been a topic that has been brought up since I was RAC chair. So I'm glad that there's serious momentum in implementing it, not just from a technological standpoint, but to a procedural and operational point.
Thank you, Brian. And I see Eli's questions came in for folks who might not be able to read it. Is if any of the Metro Hall of Fame folks will be highlighted will be Metro Lift or senior discount to additionally uplift those program options. It seems like it might be a 2-for-1.
Just as Jewel said earlier, I want to be able to give you the right answer, so let me go back and ask the customer experience team that's putting this together. It could be. My guess is they're trying to get a representative sample, but let me give you more than a guess.
Thank you. Okay. I'm not seeing any more hands online or in the room. Thank you, Jewel and Gabriel, for coming in and joining us. We're really excited to see how this rollout goes, and if you have any questions for us and how we can be helpful during the rollout or afterwards on some feedback, we would, I'm sure, love to have you come back. All right, we'll move on to our next item is the RAC FY 2026 annual report. So for those in the room, we do have some written copies to follow along. Thomas is also going to share his screen. So if we make any edits or comments in real time, those folks at home can see it as well. I'm just ask that you can leave your draft copies in the room when you're done so we don't get confused copies out and about. We'll get the final report formatted and released. It'll go out with the board report when the board gets their information. Yeah, you can mark those up if you, absolutely. So the process, how this generally has worked in the past, is we'll have Thomas kind of lead us through the report, and we'll go section by section and issue by issue, just to talk a little bit about the summary, what the data was, and what some of the proposed solutions were, and what we're putting into the report. We're not going to generally we don't wordsmith in these sessions. If you have like thoughts about the language, or where a certain recommendation, like let's have a discussion about it. And then we'll kind of we'll make those adjustments after the meeting and finalize that draft that goes to the board. But we won't make any substantive changes outside of this meeting unless we decide that's something we need to do. I'd like not to, because we'd like to have the final report to the board. So this will be the bulk of our meeting tonight. And please feel free to share your thoughts, ideas. If you don't think something's missing or you think something should come out, this is the time to voice those concerns and thoughts as we are, so we can present this to the board at the next meeting. Also would like to thank everyone for their work to get responses. I think this was our record number of responses to the report, which just shows that we're developing deeper connections to the community and the work of all of the members of the BRAC. And a special thank you to everyone who helped draft. It's not an easy task to put all of this together, but an important one for the RAC and to help the board understand some more sentiments from riders that customer research might not be bringing out. This report's a great way to kind of surface customer concerns and dive a little bit deeper than what Metro staff might have already, and to bring up some new ideas. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Thomas to go ahead and lead us through.
Okay, hi everyone. So yeah, I guess I'll just take you guys through the whole report. Thank you to everyone who contributed with the writing, and as Cole said, as well as distributing the survey to your networks. It's great that we were able to get a record number of responses, and yeah, the report wouldn't be possible without you guys. So thank you. So first of all, we have the executive summary. I think this is just describing what the RAC does and why we're doing this. So okay, here's where it really starts. So we have the introduction, and here's just going over the sort of the gist of the major findings. And so, we mentioning that we received over 300 responses, explaining what the different sections are. So section 2, the next one, is a data summary and rider census. Section 3 is the bulk of the report, where you have where you have all the rider concerns. And here I just listed some of the percentages I gathered from looking over the responses. And so frequency and reliability seem to be the biggest concerns. Oh yeah, here, it's all in section 2, but yeah, so we chose 5 basically main areas to be top rider concerns. So frequency and reliability of service. There were a lot of comments about this. I sort of counted these separately, thinking they'd be their own sections while I was going over the responses, but I decided to combine them. System connectivity and like routing and stuff like that. The quality of the facilities. This is split into both like metro facilities and bus facilities. Safety, crime, and law enforcement presence. And then like communications and like access to information, like wait time and all that. And then here's the rider census. So we got most of the responses from DC, but also some representation from Maryland and Virginia. And so yeah, and again, we were able to increase our representation of people from different parts of the system. So we got responses from 68 metro stations, all 6 metro lines, and 52 bus routes. So that was an increase on all fronts. So the first rider concern, as I mentioned previously, is the frequency and reliability of service. This was also split into Metrobus and Metro Rail. There were a lot of comments about, bus reliability and the headways, specifically in the context of, Better Bus, which was debuted this summer. And so, some people noticed that service was better, but there were like mixed responses to the Better Bus changes. And we'll get more of that in the system connectivity part of the report. But so people still said they noticed issues with bus bunching, delays, and buses not adhering to their headways or schedule. And of course, a lot of people wanted to see higher frequencies on certain lines. So we have some quotes here. Thank you to Irene for doing that. And then so here are the proposed solutions. So, sorry. The first one, bus priority infrastructure. So like bus lanes and transit signal priority. I feel like, this is, probably something that a lot of people could get behind. There was a lot of support for bus lanes in a lot of the responses. And so I feel like this is important. Number two, just, simply increasing the frequency of a lot of routes. I think it's like only like 19 out of WMATA's 126 routes have headways of 12 minutes or better and are considered high frequency. Those routes do cover large parts of the region, but I think, a lot of people would like to see, headways go down and not having to wait for, a bus for 20 minutes or more. And then also hiring more bus drivers. There were a lot of people who mentioned that they experience bus delays or reliability issues because of operator availability. There was like a Washington Post article, I think it's linked here, but it said around like 2.7 trips were canceled last year because of no driver being present. And so, I guess we're just recommending that WMATA, continues its initiatives to hire more bus drivers. And from the, we were able to visit one of the bus facilities last year, and it seemed like they're already doing a lot to hire people, and they're offering training that's paid, and it seems like WMATA is offering some of the better salaries and benefits of a lot of transit agencies. And then for Metro Rail,
Thomas, before we move,
yeah,
I think this is
sorry.
a good, I think once we get to the end, the proposed solutions, it's always that's a good place for us to stop and grab feedback.
Sure.
My only thought is we might just want to add to 1 and 3, just a little bit of WMATA should continue to or increase their existing efforts, because I think WMATA is doing a lot of these, bus priority infrastructure is the responsibility of the jurisdictions. But, WMATA certainly plays a key role in making sure those things happen. So maybe just a little one sentence, just kind of emphasizing that. And 3, just, I think, actually it's probably okay. But just acknowledging that they know they have a shortage and to address it as quickly as possible. Are there any other thoughts for this section?
Just wanted to add, thank you, Thomas, for acknowledging the contribution, but I know there were some other RAC members who contributed to quotes, I noticed, so thank you to everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, moving on. Then we have like Metro Rail frequency and reliability. There was a lot of positive feedback regarding, frequency increases across across the system, and sorry, at peak hours, WMATA is pretty much pushing the system to capacity. As we've discussed in a lot of meetings. There was positive feedback on extending the yellow line to Greenbelt and splitting the silver line. and, you know, the extra peak hour trips, so people seem to like that. And, you know, people still had issues with like some of the reliability during peak hours because, you know, when you're running so many trains, if you have like one delay, that can sort of lead to, you know, a whole cascade of disruptions. And, you know, and then there's also, you know, concerns over weekend and off-peak service. You know, I think the frequencies are still pretty good, but regardless, there's like track work a lot of the times on the weekends, and I think people, you know, have been a little unhappy about that, even though it is necessary, you know, for the state of good repair of the system. But yeah, and then so for proposed solutions, one of them is modernizing the rail signaling system, and we just had a presentation about that a couple meetings ago. And so, yeah, that would be CBTC, and that's, I think, exactly what WMATA is going for, and I think I mentioned that here. But, yeah, I tried to emphasize that, you know, a lot of the, you know, signal-related issues are, you know, the cause for, you know, some of these delays, particularly on, like, the older parts of the system, like the Red Line. And riders seem to notice that, too, because I think it appears in, like the delay reasoning. And then expanding service hours, increasing off-peak frequency. Brandon also noticed, pointed out to me that WMATA already did this actually last year. So WMATA is opening earlier on weekends and an hour later on you know, Fridays and Saturdays. There were a fair amount of comments, I think, regarding, you know, saying that it was a little bit hard to catch flights in the morning because of the operating hours. And so I'm not sure what more, if Metro could actually, you know, reasonably do that, but just a suggestion again. And then another proposal is maybe like running shorter but more frequent trains during like off-peak hours, you know, just so you don't have to wait for like, you know, 10 to 12 minutes, especially on, you know, lines that are a little bit further out. But yeah, and then running more 8-car trains during peak hours. To be honest, this technically doesn't have to do with reliability, is more addressing a symptom of poor reliability, which would be overcrowding. But, you know, other things cause that as well. And, you know, I mentioned, you know, 8,000 series cars are coming out. But, yeah, it just seemed appropriate. So does anyone have any questions or comments about this section?
Yeah, Brian, and then I see Alex's hand and William's up. Go ahead.
First of all, this is great. Thank you so much. I would include, and I don't know where specifically it would be. This is where the wordsmithing can be postponed. But I do want to make sure that we cover our basis and include, I think to a point Cole made earlier, encouraging WMATA to continue its engagement with our jurisdictional partners to help implement the full recommendations of DMV moves. I think that's a very essential component to ensuring that these solutions are actually followed through on from a financing perspective.
Yeah, we'll find the right place to put that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe at the like other concerns section, because there were some people who like mentioned funding in like their survey responses, which is actually kind of cool. So we can mention that there. So yeah, thank you, Brian.
Alex.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much to everyone who put in a ton of work to get this draft up and running. It's looking really nice. But one question I wanted to ask is, for the proposed solutions, is the material in those sections specifically derived from writer comments, or is it also including the thoughts of the RAC members that wrote this, or is it a mix of both? I just want to make sure I understand it properly.
I would say it's a mix of both, primarily driven by the survey, but we as the RAC get a lot of these presentations, and representing rider voices and concerns, we should include the thoughts of the RAC. So some of these might not be mentioned specifically. Like I don't think CBTC is specifically mentioned in there, but it's something that we know, we see it in the data that we know when riders are talking about delays due to down signals. We know because the presentations we have, that's because we have a really out-of-date signaling system, and we need to update to a modern signaling system to decrease those delays. So it's kind of taking, some of this is taking the next step of what riders are telling us and formalizing that into a recommendation to the board, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I just wanted to make sure I understood the context behind all of these. And it might potentially be worth mentioning that like RAC members are kind of taking all this stuff together and from their own perspective, just so the point of view of each of these is clear, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It could just like be like a sentence in the intro or something, but this is looking great. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And William.
Great. Thank you, Cole. Yeah, you touched on what I was focusing on, the CBTC proposed solution. It seems to me that is not just focused on off-peak like the other. It's not focused on off-peak. So perhaps, couch it in terms of regarding overall frequency or something, because I was initially looking at it as, if the problem is off-peak frequency, CBTC is going to be both peak and off-peak. But do you know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I just wanted to share my thought.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I was sort of just thinking CBTC would be like a long-term solution that, would require significant investment in, infrastructure and more funding, whereas maybe off-peak hours, Metro's not pushing its system capacity as it is, during peak hours. So I was thinking maybe they could potentially, do some service increases there. Yeah, maybe I could be a little bit more specific about what that would look like, because in some ways, maybe Metro feels that they've already matched the current demand for, weekend service. But again, as I think I mentioned here, even though, rush hour ridership is slightly down, weekend and off-peak ridership are increasing. And they're above what they were pre-pandemic. So yeah, that was my thought behind that.
Okay, thank you, Thomas.
Yeah. Okay. So the next part is system connectivity and routing. So a lot of this is going to have to do with Better Bus. But I also want to mention things, how do people get from their destinations to metro stations or to bus stops. So also mentioning things like, walkability, access to micro-mobility, last mile connections. But a lot of this has to do with buses and transferring between bus and rail. So there was, some mixed feedback about Better Bus. There were definitely some positive responses. People, appreciated how, some of the service was streamlined. There was also some negative feedback that we received. A lot of comments about increased how people had to, transfer more to get to their destination. Which with this system like WMATA, again, only 19 of Metro's bus routes come 12 minutes or better. And a lot of times, I don't think these transfers are particularly well timed, especially when they're driving on city streets. And so, that could mean wait times of up to 20 minutes or more when you're taking the bus. And that's just not sustainable for riders. So that's definitely it's one thing that we'll address in the solutions. And then also like gaps in, some service, people notice that, it's a little more difficult to get, across DC or between the suburbs in Maryland and Virginia. And, I did mention that Metro does have some like surprisingly good, suburban bus routes and crosstown bus routes. And then also, there were some comments, about people having to walk more to reach their bus stops. And then also concerns about like walkability near metro stations, and, access to micromobility. And so, yeah, so the first solution is, kind of broadly improving transfer coordination across the network. So one solution I kind of mentioned was just increased frequency. And I guess I should also refer back to the previous section. I'll add that in, I guess. But then I also, so one solution I had read about previously is, I believe it's called a pulse, which it's more suited to, suburbs where you can't really provide that sort of every 12 or 15-minute service. And basically, maybe you have buses that come like every 30 minutes, but on like, if they all meet at like a metro station or maybe like another like transit center or something like that, and they all stop there for a few minutes at the same time, which allows, passengers to transfer easily. And, it's a system that could be thrown off by delays, but I read that it was implemented in other parts of the country and the world at large, and maybe it's something Metro could do, because from my experience as a rider, at least, I've noticed that some of these bus connections seem kind of random, and you always have to be like checking the schedule just to make sure the transfer is going to work. And I think better coordination could significantly improve rider experience. Another thing that Brandon also pointed out is Metro previously had piloted this bus transfer signal lights for when like a train was arriving or departing, they'd have like a bus wait there for a little bit longer so that the passengers from the arriving train could transfer onto the bus seamlessly, and so that they wouldn't have to wait for the next one. Yeah, they should, that's something I think Metro could, definitely more tangibly pursue. And then another one that's kind of broad, but continue to evaluate and adjust the Better Bus network. So continuing to take in feedback on bus routes. I think there was like a bus town hall mentioned by the people who were presenting just before us. So it's good that they're doing that. But yeah, I think, given the mixed feedback, they should definitely continue to listen to the riders to make sure that they're providing the best bus route possible. And then walkability and micromobility options. So a lot of this technically isn't in Metro's hands, but I made sure to emphasize that Metro should work with local jurisdictions to ensure that there's safe pedestrian access and as well as bike access to from nearby destinations to metro stations and bus stops, because a lot of people walk to transit. There are people who drive and park at a station, but a lot of times if people already have a car, they're gonna just drive. So walkability and biking and scootering, having those options is important. So I mentioned they should continue partnering with Capital Bike Share. I think a lot of stations already have that, and they sort of indicate that a station has that on some of the trains, but maybe just it would be nice if they were to show like which exit leads you to the bike docks and stuff like that. And then I'll also mention like they should continue to invest in transit-oriented development so that, you know, they create destinations on, right by metro stations and bus stops, you know, as opposed to people having to walk farther. But yeah, any questions or comments about this section?
Yeah, Matthew.
I just thought it was really appropriate that, and you guys did a phenomenal job on the report. The draft is amazing. But the third option, the micromobility, I think we really step back and take a look. We want to support the agency being welcoming to however it's engaged and used with. And I do see just from personal people are coming to engage with Metro differently. So they're catching the Lime scooters, the Bird scooters, the Capital bike shares up there. And I'm wondering if there's a way we could encourage or support like some sort of central area where those, because what I'm seeing now is like these things are just dropped outside on the side of the station and they become like trip and fall hazards. So we want to make sure we continue to engage with the development of welcoming the micromobility options or however customers will arrive at the stations, but also making sure that there's like maybe a designated area or an idea of where to place this thing once you arrive. Because a lot of people, it's you're there, you drop it, and then you're on the train or the bus or whatever, and on to your next destination. But I think that was really timely to include that, so great job getting that in there. Great job in general, the report's phenomenal.
Thank you for that comment. Definitely will include that. That's, yeah.
I definitely like the addition of the Pulse suggestion. I think that's a good idea to improve connections across the system. Yeah, I've run after us. I've been on systems that do something like, that do a Pulse, and it was bus-only system, so it becomes even more important. And so it is a huge help to making sure you make that connection and encourages riders to come to the system.
Okay, so next up we have the quality of facilities. So I split this into bus and metro again. Yeah, so I guess I had previously split it into like cleanliness and then like broader quality of facilities, but then I just decided to combine it because it was easier. So this covers a variety of topics, you know, ranging from elevators and escalators to wayfinding to cleanliness, to snow clearance and stuff like that. So, yeah, so regarding buses, so a lot of people, you know, notice that, you know, bus stops sometimes weren't always in the best conditions. And again, a lot of that is if it's on, you know, city or county streets, that's up to the jurisdiction. But, you know, as you'll see in the proposed solutions, I emphasized that WMATA should continue to work with the jurisdictions to ensure that the facilities that they have provided for people to board Metro buses are, you know, up to par. You know, people want, you know, also more bus shelters, you know, so they have cover from the elements and also seating, you know, even if there isn't a shelter, seating is always nice and it's helpful for those with accessibility needs. Yeah, and then, so there were, people did notice improvements on the buses themselves, such as the change recently from cloth to vinyl seating. That was positively received. But, you know, there were still some comments about, you know, how some buses weren't always the cleanest. So, yeah. So proposed solutions, first of all, just increasing the number of shelters and seating at bus stops. So Metro should work with the jurisdictions, you know, to ensure that at the busiest stops or, you know, where there's space, that they can have shelters and seating, you know, to have cover from the elements. And then I think Metro's already at their own, at like Metro stations and like, I guess, other transit centers. I think there's like an ongoing bus shelter replacement program, which is very good. So yeah, they should keep that up. And then for snow and ice removal, so yeah, there were a lot of comments about that. And so technically, you know, if it's all on Metro property, again, it's not up to them to clear the snow. With that being said, WMATA maybe should coordinate a little bit closer with the local governments to ensure that, you know, the bus stops aren't, you know, totally blocked off by snow. And so this may just look like identifying which, you know, bus routes are highest priority for clearance, or, you know, maybe providing on information about how bus stops should be cleared to ensure that, you know, the doors aren't being blocked, or, you know, there's enough space for riders to board. And then I guess this is sort of like just general maintenance, keeping up the current facilities as opposed to just adding new ones. And so, so maybe that means rebuilding, you know, shelters that have deteriorated or have like broken glass, improving lighting, or, you know, adding waste bins to prevent litter. And for Metro, you know, bus stops on WMATA property, you know, Metro should continue to ensure that there's enough personnel to regularly inspect and clean up those areas. And yeah, and again, I mentioned the change from cloth to vinyl padding. So yeah, any comments about the bus facilities?
I had a quick one, which is for the third solution. I think it'd be great if the RAC makes the ask in the annual report that Metro staff maybe provide an update on the cloth to vinyl conversions of like what the progress looks like, what's the timeline for completion. Because I think we made a similar ask for something else last year. Something like the RAC would encourage WMATA staff to provide an update to the RAC regarding cloth to vinyl conversions or something of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
I think we could also just add, and we can make that ask separately, but I think we should for sure put in there that they should continue with the replacement.
Yeah.
Continue or consider, what's the word I'm looking for? Accelerating the replacement of cloth seats. William.
Yeah, I just want to say again that a great job on this report, especially on picking up on the need for seating at these bus stops. We had a survey of older adults in Arlington, and that was one of the top comments that we received. That there needs to be seating. You know, it just makes it easier. So thank you for picking up on that, and just a great job overall on this. Thanks.
Matthew.
You know, I'm not quite sure how to present this, so I guess I'll frame it like on solution 2, collaboration with local governments to enhance snow and ice removal. I would try to maybe stretch that to enhance quality of life across the board, because what I'm seeing is kind of like an uptick in like vagrancy. If you look at some of the complaints, to smoking weed on the platform and stations in Metro properties, on Metro vehicles, it's becoming a real nuisance and problem. So I think figuring out and making sure we have in the language a way that we introduce the collaboration, not just for snow and ice removal, but like across the spectrum of quality of life issues, I think that would be important to kind of.
Yeah, sure. And I think we touch on in the safety and like crime section, we talk about, you know, people smoking or, you know, playing music too loud, and those sort of like, you know, disruptions. But yeah, maybe, I don't know, I just thought the snow and ice in particular as a proposed solution, just because there were a lot of comments about it. But yeah, maybe combining, I guess, the two solutions. Yeah.
Let's see if we address those concerns in safety and crime, if we want to add it in there, if we want to come back and add something into one of these sections.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, we have the Metro Rail facilities. Yeah, so I think there were, there were some positive comments about the state of Metro rail facilities. But, some also did notice, still inconsistencies in cleanliness. There was, I think, a lot of commenters from the, Shaw Station noticed that the AC wasn't working and there was, leaks. So I think Metro should, probably do something about that. And then, again, with this section, we're also talking about a lot of different things like wayfinding, escalator and elevator repairs, because, metro stations are, very multifaceted. So, yeah. So first solution, ensure cleanliness and a state of good repair. And so I found this out, but Metro actually won an award for 2 of its stations for cleanliness. So, props to them for that. But, some of the stations are getting pretty old, and, there's some signs of decay across the system, including leaks or broken AC, as with the Shaw Station. And yeah, so I just said Metro should, keep up with its, cleaning jobs. And also, just adding simple things like, lighting, waste bins, and addressing leaks, just to make the system feel more in a good state of repair. But one thing I do notice that a lot of people say about the DC Metro is that it is they say it's one of the cleanest metro systems they've been on compared to other systems in the country. So yeah, I think Metro should just keep up what it's doing, and yeah. So then also improve wayfinding. There were several comments about this. And so Metro, as we had a meeting about this, I think, but Metro is sort of undertaking this large project to improve wayfinding. So they should, keep up with that. There was a lot of positive feedback about the lettered exits initiative. So I think Metro, I believe they have plans to roll that out system-wide. And then also clearly marking elevator exits. This is something that I've noticed in the system. Sometimes those aren't super clearly marked, so Metro should definitely work on that. And then also on-platform signage to indicate direction of travel and final destinations. But again, I think they're already working on that. So yeah, maybe I'll just say that they should continue their current initiatives. And then finally, maintain and improve escalators. Yeah, also with communicating outages. There's a whole section on communications. But yeah, just making sure the elevators and escalators are, up to a good state of repair. And again, WMATA is already, putting a lot of work and money into this. But some of the escalators and elevators still have yet to be repaired. So Metro should just keep doing what they're doing. And I guess the communication side of things, with alerting riders about elevator and escalator outages will be discussed in a later section. So yeah. Any comments or questions about this section?
Well, first and foremost, this is really awesome. Whole report so far, so really good job, Thomas. I think one of the big things, especially when it comes to proposed solutions, is just still hitting on, we know that Metro's working on this, but encouraging them to continue investment and to accelerate stuff, as opposed to, maybe just calling out certain things. And then also, I think maybe some other ways to maybe kind of highlight that as well is maybe we could encourage, WMATA to do more things around marketing or communicating these changes or these initiatives. Continue to encourage them to do that. to show, we know you're working on it, but maybe give riders a different perspective when they see these investments.
Okay, Pat, I see your hand's raised.
Yeah, thanks. Great job on what you've been recommending so far. Just to give an update on the wayfinding piece. And members of my team have been working with Sarah Myers and her people to suggest improvements on wayfinding, particularly signage, braille, large print, where it's placed, the lighting and all of that. The timeline has slipped a little bit. We thought we'd have something done by the end of March. Looks like we'll have prototypes out in L'Enfant Plaza with a pretty full scope of what it should look like system-wide. And there'll be time for, briefings, but, around that. And then, of course, they'll be getting feedback from RAC, from AAC, from customers and all that, and that's what they'll be putting out system-wide. But I think, at least the last time I saw a schedule, getting suggestions, revamping things, and because it's L'Enfant Plaza is fairly complicated. But with sending the project over to the board in September, October timeframe, with their thumbs up approval, and that will go national, state, system-wide. I was not aware that I guess every single station is developed differently. Signage is not uniform, it's not consistent. And people don't just, you go to one station, doesn't look like any other stations. That's what they're trying to improve. And we should be able to see something by, I think, sometime in April.
Thank you, Pat.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I believe that, in the AAC section that Pat provided, I believe that some of the signage accessibility stuff is addressed there. So thank you for providing that again, Pat. Yeah. All right, so the next section up is safety, crime, and law enforcement presence. And so, yeah, there's kind of a lot of feelings about this. So how I counted it before was safety and crime was a different section than law enforcement, but we decided to combine them. About 14% of all responses were, regarding crime and security or, disorderly behavior, while 15% of responses, regarding the law enforcement presence like National Guard, mostly the National Guard, but also like ICE and similar federal agencies that have been recently deployed to the region. Those were about 15% of responses. So on the crime and security and behavior side, so there were a lot of, there's some people who, were concerned about things like smoking, loud music, people asking for money. And some said that NTPD did not do enough to, remove or deal with unruly passengers. One rider said they regularly saw weapons on their bus route, so that's something that should definitely be addressed. So there were mixed feelings overall about increasing MTPD presence, MTPD and I guess police presence specifically. Some people said they felt safer when there was more MTPD and security presence and wanted officers across the network, while others, felt the opposite. They did not believe that increased law enforcement presence was the move, and some respondents brought up concerns of police not being able to properly handle certain situations or things like racial profiling. And again, similar range of opinions on the topic of fare enforcement, which was, there were a handful of responses about that. Some people thought it was a very important issue worth addressing, while others thought it would be, excessive, and it could lead to harmful situations. When it came to National Guard, ICE, and other law enforcement presence, like virtually all feedback was extremely negative. Riders said they felt the presence of such agencies was either pointless or just, actively harmful to passengers. And so, for proposed solutions, I tried to have like a sort of a mix, try to balance the two sentiments that riders shared. So carefully enhance MTPD and security presence where needed. Overall, it felt like there were some areas that riders, certainly wanted more security presence, such as, for instance, empty parking lots, maybe when it's dark out, people feel unsafe, or maybe just on buses and trains. And I also tried to emphasize WMATA has currently like the lowest crime rate in its history, partly because of measures, they started banning people who committed serious offenses. They have upped their police presence. And then they also have increased video surveillance. And I try to emphasize, ensure that law enforcement personnel are held to high standards of conduct and that riders don't feel overwhelmed with excessive police presence. And then regarding the federal law enforcement agencies, there's kind of a tension here because pretty much everyone who commented on the National Guard was very unhappy about their presence. Similar sentiment about ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, immigration enforcement in general, I guess. So MTPD has actively collaborated with the National Guard. Brandon pointed out again that when we had the police chief here, he kind of gave a mixed response, but it was confirmed that yes, MTPD is partnering with the National Guard, and that's why you will see a lot of National Guard in the metro. And I guess they're trying to follow the lead of the DC government, the city government in that regard. With regards to ICE and Customs Border Patrol, Metro is not partnered with them, but they have been spotted in the system. And some riders mentioned that they did not like that at all. And so this is kind of a complicated issue because people really don't like federal law enforcement presence or the actions of the current presidential administration. However, the current presidential administration has canceled funds for transit agencies over political disagreements. For instance, New York, they're in a battle over there regarding the Second Avenue subway funding and also the new tunnels under the Hudson River. So pretty important pieces of infrastructure being jeopardized by pretty petty political disagreements, in my opinion. Metro is, as you all know, heavily dependent on money from the federal government. And so I tried to emphasize that, we understand the agency doesn't want to take any actions that would jeopardize its funding. Just trying to emphasize that they should really consider, the strong rider sentiment against the National Guard and, similar federal law enforcement entities. And above all, that they should be transparent about their collaboration with these agencies. And then another one was expanding another solution was expanding non-police crisis response services. So some riders pointed out that sometimes police may not be the best to handle every single situation, such as situations involving mental health crises or, individuals who are homeless. And so Metro actually already has a crisis intervention team, but it's pretty small. And, that in that way, it sort of limits their capacity to reach, these situations in a timely manner. I think Metro does have I probably should have mentioned here, they are partnered with, I think sort of like some civilian response teams, but it's a different initiative. I should probably add it in. I forgot. But so they should, I just said they should continue, consider partnering with jurisdictional initiatives such as DC's community response teams, which is separate from the other thing I forgot to add. I will look into what it's called, but they list it on their website. I don't think it's a governmental thing. I think it's like a sort of volunteer organization. And then after that, enhancing reporting mechanisms. So just keep up what they're doing with advertising the MyMTPD number. But yeah, just making sure that riders know how they can contact Metro Police, which might be better suited than, calling 911, but obviously 911 is fine either way. But just make sure that riders know how they can access these services. And then finally, I guess, improving lighting and visibility just in these, in certain areas where it's dark out and riders might feel unsafe, such as metro stations or, the bus areas, as well as working with local jurisdictions to ensure that, all bus stops are well lit. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for safety, security, and law enforcement presence. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I think this strikes a good balance of navigating the political landscape and the realities that WMATA is in without, I definitely worked a bit on this section, wordsmithed here. I think we don't want to create unnecessary problems for the board and for staff while also communicating our message. And I think we're pretty close. I'd love to hear if folks disagree or their thoughts on this section. And I do want to just acknowledge William's comment, make sure we see that in the chat there about the psych response team that Arlington County has and how they work with WMATA. Other thoughts? Yeah, Brian.
So I do appreciate the sensitivity with which this language was crafted, and I do agree with the sentiment. And I also think that as a public advisory body, we shouldn't be afraid to say the quiet part out loud. But I do think that as it pertains to the second solution, I think particularly around the federal government's potential response to criticism is partially speculative, and I personally don't think it would be responsible to put that in an official document, and would recommend largely scrapping most of that language in the second part of solution number 2. But that's just my personal opinion. I just don't think that we as a board-appointed advisory body should be commenting on some of those things.
Yeah, I think that's a fair perspective. Maybe we just say Metro may not want to take any actions that would jeopardize the funding, and then not leave in the part about what the current administration has already done elsewhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, Brian, I kind of tend, the more we talk about it, the more I tend to agree that kind of the middle section of recommendation 2, that where we go from like, while the riders we surveyed overwhelmingly disapproved, I think we strike until we get to WMATA should carefully consider ways to distinguish local law enforcement from federal law enforcement. Just because that is kind of speculative, and that will be kind of what draws the headline, and I don't think it adds to what the riders are saying. Is that kind of what you're saying, Brian? Where did you want to start? I'm kind of thinking it's the 2 sentences that start with, while riders surveyed overwhelmingly disapproved of federal law enforcement presence, which we do mention in the issue summary. So it's not, that is said that up top, just that the current presidential administration has canceled funds from transit agencies over political disagreements. We all know that's true. I don't think we need to include it in there. And the speculation that Metro is heavily dependent on federal funding to run and maintain the system, until you get to the back page where it says, there's a comment that says, WMATA should carefully consider ways to limit. I think you just stop, you make that comma is where the strike ends, and you just go, WMATA should. Limits, we all know it, and I think we're here to give a recommendation, not speculate what the federal government might do.
Yeah.
I think it's what
that sounds
Brian's
good.
saying, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Matthew?
Yeah, really quickly, I would pretty much piggybacking off you, Brian, and you, Cole. But overall, I think you did a fantastic job putting this together because it is a very sensitive topic, and it's kind of unfortunate we have to approach it so gingerly, but it does need to be handled with care considering our roles in this thing. So yeah, I tend to agree, Cole. I do think it's not up to us to say WMATA should consider ways to limit the collaboration. In general, we want to make sure the agency is engaging in a collaborative effort with everybody. You know, it's I don't know if it's our place to say we should consider specifically to limit that collaboration or suggest that WMATA should limit that collaboration with any law enforcement body, especially federal. You know, I just piggyback off of that. But I think overall, the solutions were well presented considering the sensitivity of the topic here. So yeah, great job on that. But yeah, Cole, I'm on board with that, 100%.
Yeah, I think the most important part for, you know, the long term of the safety of the system is really distinguishing what MTPD and those special police how those are different from National Guard and other federal agencies operating system. Kind of like when you think about community policing and being a part of the community, MTPD is here to stay and isn't going to change with the federal administration, you know, as elections change. And so I think we want to ensure that riders feel when they see MTPD, they're not having a similar reaction as they are with other with other law enforcement agencies. So I think under WMATA's jurisdiction is MTPD, and they can control how those folks interact with riders, and that's a relationship that's really important to maintain long term. So distinguishing those two is, I think, important. Ensuring that WMATA does that. Brian?
Yeah, so I know I don't want to get in the habit of workshopping specific language, but this is really important because this particular language. So to go off of what Matthew said, so would we also scrap WMATA to comfort and safety?
I was thinking WMATA the sentence should really read, in my eyes, WMATA should carefully consider ways to distinguish local law enforcement from federal law enforcement.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Brad.
guess I think that I think it's right that we as a body may not want to directly call for limiting of collaboration, but I wonder if there's a way that we could emphasize that like is a very clearly like rider-driven feedback that, as Thomas had mentioned, was unanimous. So something along the lines of like, WMATA should, sorry, not to wordsmith more, but like, WMATA, we can keep like the sentence as written, but adding something along the lines of like, and hear out the voices of riders who have unanimously in our survey indicated concerns about collaboration between federal law enforcement and local and MTPD. Like, I think that strikes the balance of emphasizing that this is a concern that I don't know how many people filled out and expressed while not taking an explicit position that we are saying you must do it, but that riders have this opinion, and maybe Metro should think about how they can address that.
Yeah, I think there's a way to do that, and we can, I think, maybe play in the doc together about what exactly that looks like over the next couple days, too. So we don't have to settle this right here, too. Yeah, Lucas.
Yeah, I think it's probably like also important to call out, like, I'm assuming, and from what I've seen in like the feedback form, like a lot of riders have called out that the federal presence has made it feel unsafe, and we need to distinguish that, like, if riders are feeling unsafe, this is going to be a detriment to the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will, I would encourage us all to Well, Thomas and I for sure will go in and we'll play with some of what we're hearing and then send a note around and have everyone go in and take a look and provide your kind of thoughts and comments.
Yeah.
So we can try to get to a place where we all feel good about this section. But I think we knew this was probably gonna be the most discussed section, so that's okay. 'Cause I think it is a sensitive issue and one that a lot of riders care about. Okay, I think we're ready to go to the next section.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you guys for the feedback. I appreciate it. Next we have communication and access to information. So this is basically going over information about wait times, as well as like detour information, elevator and escalator information. There was kind of like mixed feedback again. A lot of people weren't super happy with, how Metro sometimes communicate delays, but there were some comments that people noticed improvements in how Metro is communicating, things like construction or detours in advance. Some proposed solutions, so advertise and update Metro Pulse. So Metro Pulse was, recently debuted as, sort of the app where people can track Metro trains and buses and also the delays on the systems and alerts. It also seemed like some people didn't know about Metro Pulse. There were some responses that like, oh, WMATA should like develop its own like app, or saying where can I find like information about wait times. And so I think first of all, they should just advertise it a little bit more. I've already seen some advertisements in metro stations and trains, but yeah, they should keep doing that. And then some issues with Metro Pulse. So sometimes when you click on a bus stop, it doesn't even show if sometimes no bus will appear, not even like a scheduled bus, which I think can be an issue. Because this like will happen like during the middle of the day. I think people need to be able to access wait time information reliably. And then another big one, align headway information across platforms. So as some of you may have experienced, the information about wait times can differ significantly between whether using Bus ETA, Metro Pulse, Google or Apple Maps, or like the transit app, or especially the digital displays at certain bus stops. Those can be like kind of inaccurate too. So WMATA should first make sure its own systems are accurate, and then collaborate with third-party platforms like Google Maps or other apps to ensure that no matter where someone checks for their information, that they'll always be able to get like accurate information. And generally, I'd say Bus ETA and Metro Pulse. I think also I've heard the transit app is pretty reliable. Those are the best ones, and then Google, Apple Maps lag behind, and then I think the digital displays at bus stops aren't super good either. But yeah, I think this is a big one because this has a significant impact on rider experience. And then I kind of just like generally improve and also amplify alerts communications. So one good thing about Metro Pulse is that you can also see like how the performance of bus and metro routes, which is really nice. And the delays are usually posted there. But there's like still some issues. So for elevator and escalator outages, sometimes the in-station signage and also the information available online is a little bit inconsistent and sometimes not updated properly. There's like I believe there's an elevator and escalator alert service. like that you can sign up for, but I don't think it's super well advertised, although maybe the people who might want that information more already have it. But still, I think it could be important. Maybe they just integrate that into Metro Pulse already, or at least better advertise the current website for that. And then for bus detour information, one thing that Metro does not do very often is post maps of the detour. And if they do post them, I was not able to find them. And yeah, I think that's important because visual aids can better help riders understand, you know, the nature of the detour, which stops are being skipped. Because sometimes it just like lists out like a route, like a bunch of streets or stuff like that, and that can be a little hard to visualize. And then I just said that, you know, they should streamline their operations. Like whenever they get a delay, they should work as fast as possible to communicate what the delay is, what it's causing. I think they already do a decent job of that, but make sure that it's communicated across like all platforms in a timely manner so that, you know, people aren't left in the dark about that sort of thing. So, yeah. Any comments or questions on this section? Well, okay. So the next one is Metro Access and Transit Accessibility. Pat, I don't know if you want to take the lead on this one since you wrote it.
Well, I don't have the document in front of me, so why don't you go through the sections and I'll answer questions if people have them.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
And we
Good.
we only have about 30 minutes left and we still have to do elections. So let's try to, the last
yeah,
sections,
okay.
let's try to, as soon as we got to the bulk.
Speed it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, first of all, I guess it's sort of maybe less about rider concerns, but more about the accomplishments. So maybe, I don't know if we'll keep it in this section, but we'll see. First is Metro Access Service Stabilization and Performance. So I think they worked with Metro Access and the third-party providers of paratransit to improve on-time performance, and they achieved 90% there. And then they improved the abilities, rides networks for various improvements.
And you want me to jump into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Just on both of those things, Metro Access started off the year with a new contract, new provider. They had some issues. They vastly underestimated streamlining what it was going to cause. It really slowed everything down. So they basically went back to having 4 or 5 distribution points, which is what they had before when they had 90 to 92% on-time performance. That was so they really could come back up to speed doing what had worked in 23 and 24. They tried to improve it in 25 and it just wasn't good enough. On the abilities ride, last year there were about 2.1 million trips on Metro Access. 1.6 million of those were with a program which is complementary to the paratransit van service called Metro Access. They have Uber and Lyft, probably about 15 providers, cab providers. You serve other forms of transportation throughout the system. For the last 7 years, this was a free service for those of us who were allowed to, get in the lottery and allowed to use it. It basically allowed for us to have sedans and vehicles. The system, let's see, if you're paying for a paratransit trip and you're using the van systems and your dispatchers and reservationists and the whole thing, comes out to about $110 a trip. Much of that, of course, is subsidized by WMATA. If you are using Uber and Lyft and vans and sedans and vans and cabs or whatever, comes out to about $35 a trip. So for every trip that you could put on this abilities ride, you were saving about 75 bucks. So there were tremendous savings. People really liked it. It was free, and that was great. We just heard recently, and my group agreed with it, that there's going to be an administrative fee of $3 for each trip starting July 1st. Try to subsidize some of the costs, because free is nice, but we can't afford free anymore. So those were the two big things that were happening, fairly big things that were happening last year.
Thanks, Pat. And while we've got you, I know you included in your report some stuff around streamlined metro access recertification policy, the work
Yes.
that's happening on the signage accessibility initiative. We know you've been doing a lot with the PG County Transit Vision, and rail station.
And I think the other thing that was in there also, or it should have been anyway, was we're looking at, we've gotten involved with restrooms in the station. So during our next meeting, hopefully we'll hear about the Metro Access, the eligibility feasibility study that the board requested that the Office of System-Wide Accessibility put out. They also have been working on a plan to let people know where the restrooms are, which ones are fully ADA compliant, which ones aren't, and then and that should be coming out. And then the last thing that we were working on, as you said, was the signage, of which we should have that coming out in April. And then we were also getting involved with the preparedness process, getting involved with some of the training so that individuals who are either working on the trains, mostly on the trains, some buses, would understand how to deal with people with wheelchairs, service animals, and that kind of thing. So those are kind of the big four things we've been working on.
Awesome. Thank you.
And if you wanted to take the signage stuff out and put that in another section, that's fine.
No, I think it's good, and I think it's something that
Okay.
we'll continue to work closely with the AAC on as they're developing the final guidance for all the stations.
We'll get a chance to look at it sometime this month, I think, at Lafon Plaza. It'll be good. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that pretty much.
Yeah, that covers
does-
everything that
yeah,
I see
covers
in
everything.
here.
Okay.
Just in interest of time, does anyone reading through the other concern section, is there anything folks know they want to call out or discuss specifically in this section? I know we do talk a bit about funding and fare payments, buses and trains to the airports, and equity across the system. Sweet. Thomas, do you just want to walk us through the rider sentiment really quickly? And then we can kind of wrap this up and move to elections.
Oh, yeah, sure. And thank you to Eli for providing the other concerns section, and to Brandon for doing the analysis of rider sentiment. So overall, it was, we got, mixed feedback on a variety of topics, including, the quality of service, quality of facilities. But a lot of the changes people noticed were fairly positive regarding improvements to metro service, specifically like the rail side. Mixed feedback on Better Bus, but there still were some positive comments about that. And, people said, it took me a while to get used to the changes, but I'm fine with them now. And so there was a lot of that too, which is good. Also positive feedback. We didn't really have a section that was sort of on the other concerns section. Very positive feedback on the Tap Ride Go program. A lot of people were happy about that. So the average rating of WMATA was 7.56 out of 10, which is a slight increase from last year, and we had nearly double the responses from last year, so that's still good. And here's sort of the distribution. This is actually, I believe, only from the English survey. Oh, you did? Oh, thank you, Brendan. Okay, perfect. And then, yeah, like conclusion, basically thanking the board and encouraging to pursue some of the solutions we've proposed here. So, yeah. Any other comments or questions about the report?
My only thought is I wonder if we should move section 4 to before rider concerns to set the stage a little bit more for, I think sometimes leading with the concerns, sometimes it can set the wrong tone for the report. I think we know that we generally have seen a real improvement in the system, but that shouldn't stop us from addressing all of these concerns. I wonder what folks think about that, if we just move that section to the top after the introduction. Yeah, Brandon.
I think it was just the structure was passed down to me
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Lucas,
Yeah.
and Lucas passed. So I don't know if there was like a strategic decision as to if we wanted to do like positive to transition to the conclusion, but I think it makes sense. I don't have any concerns.
That is the tone we'd like to convey. A positive, we're proud of the progress. We want to see it keep going in the same direction.
Yeah, I think so, because it sets that riders are overall happy with this system, but here's how we can continue to improve. I think that's will set the right tone if you set the sections up that way.
Sure.
And seeing no one having any issues, okay. Oh, we have one, someone? Irene, do you have something? I'm here. Alex.
Thank you. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone who put a lot of work into this. And I wanted to ask at this point, what kind of feedback are we looking for just to keep pushing this forward? I unfortunately haven't had a ton of time to dig into this as I've been traveling for the past week and I won't get back till this Sunday. So what can I do to be of assistance? Is it mostly just peer reviewing and leaving small comments in the document? Would we prefer like direct edits for some sort of like small grammatical changes if I catch those? Just what can I do to be of assistance for the rest of this?
I would say grammatical things make the change. If you have more substantive, let's leave comments or track at this point since we've all been through this together. I know I'm going to spend some time over the weekend looking through here, catching some more things, and maybe once we've done another pass, we'll send another email around for everyone to take another look, and then if anyone has, we'll go and format it into a nicer looking, visually pleasing document that we can present, and we'll add an appendix with some of the raw responses from the survey, because I know some of the board members like to read through those. So we'll want to add that without comment. And Director Worth, is there anything, thoughts you might have for us as we go into another round of editing that you want to share?
Just had one question. Are you planning to do like an executive summary of the report as part of this? Like with the highlights or actions or the things that you covered?
Yeah, I think we
It's
can.
at the top. I think it's sort of just I think a lot of the language is copied from last year, aside from the findings and the scope. But yeah, I think it's just sort of some formal language about what the RAC is meant to do and how this report aligns with our goals. And then I guess we also have the introduction, which is like a broad overview of some of the overall sentiment. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we can take a look at the introduction section and see how we can make that more of the executive summary of, or maybe really even just changing the headings around to be the introduction is the purpose, authority, and scope, and the executive summary is what section 1 is.
Okay.
I think we'll change those headlines up. So that way, because when board members are looking for executive summaries, they're going to go where it says executive summary.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what the introduction is.
Okay.
And we can look at in the formatting section too and how to draw out some of those numbers.
Yeah.
So that way as folks are skimming, they can see what they're going to be finding
Yeah.
as they dig deeper into the report. So we can make sure we make that look nice.
And I'm just going to presence a comment that Irene made, last month, is she talked about maybe having a graphic or something that not only that can be used in the report, but also, online and sort of to grab people's attention. So I think that may be helpful to go along with a focused, tight executive summary for people who may not want to dig into the whole.
Yep, we can do that. Okay. Well, thank you, Thomas, for putting in the lion's share of the work on this project. We know it's a lot. But it's a really great resource for board members and for members of the public to see that their voices are still being heard and what's being done to help address those and make the system more effective for more people. And Alex, I see your hands up. Is that from earlier or the next?
Yes.
Something new?
Yeah, no, yes. One more question. For these sort of like peer review type edits, when would it be helpful to get these done by, just so we can keep the pace that we want?
The sooner the better. And we'll, for
Okay.
sure, once we've gone through and taken another pass, we'll send another email around and say, by this date, have everything in, so that way we can get everything formatted and ready to go in about, 3 weeks, John?
3 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah, so we want to be done in probably 2.5 weeks.
Ideally, if you could have it done by, what is that, Friday, the 16th, 17th? 17th, thank you. You, finish your taxes and then
Yeah.
celebrate Emancipation Day.
So maybe by the end of next week, if we can have the content finalized, we can go into spending the rest of the time getting all of the formatting done, building some graphs, adding an appendix.
All right, that sounds great. I'll be sure to get my comments done in the next, ideally week if I can.
All
So
right.
thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you all for your attention and conversation and thoughts to make this possible. I know it's a slog to get through. And so we'll move to our next item is our leadership elections. The terms of the 2 vice chairs and the chair expire today. I will not be running again to do another chair. I've done my 2 years. I'll continue as a member. And with that, I know I talked to someone who is interested in pursuing the chair role. But before I nominate that person, I'm going to, say that the roles, obviously, in addition to running the meetings, it's helping to, as the role that we'll do the chair. Sorry, I should back up and say some of the logistics. We'll elect a chair first. The bylaws state that we have to have a chair and vice chairs, one from each jurisdiction. It does not matter which jurisdiction holds which role, but if we elect a chair from DC, then we have to have one vice chair from Maryland and one from Virginia, or if a chair from Virginia, someone from Maryland, someone from DC. So between the 3 roles, you have to have one person from each jurisdiction. We will generally do the chair first, and then the 2 vice chairs. You don't have to be representing that jurisdiction if you're an at-large. We just go by what jurisdiction you live in. And so if you move during your term, we gotta make sure you talk to John so we can make sure we make any changes we need to make. In terms of the chair role, in addition to running these meetings, I work with staff and John to set the agenda and what the RAC's going to talk about. Also attending the board meetings, which are the 4th Thursday of the month, sorry. Can't always make it in person, but there's a virtual option. I know the vice chairs have attended in the past when I'm not available for either. And worst case scenario, we just submit the written report. But it's nice to be there in person to present to the board, to get some face time, to remind them of the work we're doing. And so I try to always make every opportunity I can to get there and be present with the board. And there's sometimes you get invited to do some other things like DMV moves, got to have an active role there, and those things come and go and as needed. But are there any questions about the responsibilities of doing the role or the logistics for the election process? Okay. I will go ahead and nominate the person I've talked to about the role. Not saying it's an endorsement of this person. I'm going to try to stay neutral on here, but I'll go ahead and nominate William Way to be chair for the next year. I think you have to formally accept, right, John?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, wait,
I
you
accept-
need a second, actually.
Oh, okay.
I
Second that.
Okay, and we have seconds from, I know Matthew and Brandon for our minutes, so we can make sure we get them in there. All right. Are there any other nominations for the role of chair? Or you can self-nominate if you'd like to do it. I'm not seeing any, so I'll go ahead and close the floor to nominations. William, if you'd like to say something, you may. Since you are running unopposed, you do not need to, but I'll give you the opportunity if you'd like to do so.
Well, thank you, Cole, for reaching out. I'm not going to say anything so that I don't jeopardize my candidacy.
All right. So since there, is there any, discussions or questions before we move on? Seeing none, I think I would entertain a motion to elect William Way as our chair by acclamation. Can we do that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
he's been
second.
nominated and seconded. You can just go ahead and vote.
Unless there's any objections to electing him by acclamation, we will congratulate William Way on being the new RAC chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Now we will move to our first vice chair position. Since William is from Virginia, we do have to do a chair from Maryland or DC. We will need one from each. So do we have any volunteers to be the vice chairs? These are generally pretty light roles, but you have to be willing to step in when needed. Matthew will volunteer for one. Can we do these both at the same time if we only have two people? Which jurisdiction are you from again, Matt? Maryland? Is there anyone else from Maryland that would like to run? I should ask first.
There isn't anyone else from Maryland here.
Oh,
so-
okay. Well, I'll go ahead and, we need a second for Matthew's nomination.
Second.
There's a second from Brandon. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll close nominations for our Maryland vice chair role. Do you want to say anything, Matthew?
Thank you. I love you all.
I
All
love
right.
our acceptance speeches.
Thanks, Pat. All right. I will go ahead and entertain a motion to elect Matthew Clark, the chair from the Maryland jurisdiction, by acclamation. Sure. If there's no objections, you can do anything under Robert's rules, basically. Congratulations, Matthew. All right, and now we will do our DC vice chair. Are there any folks who would like to self-nominate / volunteer to be our vice chair from DC? Okay, Lucas has nominated himself for the role. Is there anyone else? I actually need a second.
Second.
Second from Brandon. Any other nominations? I will close the floor. Lucas, would you like to say anything?
I'm proud to serve all of you.
Thank you, Lucas. All right, unless there's objection, we will consider Lucas Haboski elected to the DC Vice Chair by acclamation. Congratulations, Lucas. All right. That brings us to our new business and announcements. I don't think I have any announcements that we haven't covered. John, is there anything happening that, besides the Metro Shop being open until April 12th, that folks should know about?
Yes, so a couple quick things. You all heard Ms. Bell talk about the bus forum on the 28th. I hadn't heard about it until tonight, but I will make sure to keep you all updated if any of you want to attend or listen in. thank you to all of those who participated in the 50th anniversary events. We thought it was a great time. We hope you enjoyed yourselves, those of you who were able to attend. And I hope those of you that got swag enjoy it, and appreciate your place in Metro's 50-year history. The RAC has been around as of, well, it started meeting in 2006, so the RAC is turning 20 this year, along with Metro turning 50. So the RAC has only been around for 40% of Metro Rail's existence. So you guys are doing big things. And on the theme of swag, we also just wanted to thank our outgoing chair with some extra additional swag. So we have for you. But we, all of us in the office took the shirt.
Thank you.
So you can be styling if you want the sunglasses bigger.
I will be keeping them.
And can I? John, do you mind if I say something? Just to echo off the celebratory sentiment for transitioning, as a former RAC chair, also for 2 years, I know the commitment it takes to do what you did, and I greatly appreciate your contributions to this group, and thank you. And it's been a great several years, and we're all very appreciative for your commitment.
Well, thank you. It's been a great opportunity, and I'm not going anywhere. I am truly a Metro enthusiast and lover, and this will be a nice compliment to the pink Metro shirt I got at the Metro shop last week when I stopped in for the board meeting. I think we do have a really great system, and it's changed a lot even since I moved here in 2017. And it's been a really fun journey to have a front row seat to all the changes Metro's making and being a part of that process as a enthusiast, a rider, and a community member. So the work that we all do together is really important, and I appreciate everyone taking the time and doing the extra work to make things like this annual report happen, and being out in the community and building those connections with our partners. The more groups we can touch, the better we do our work, and the more input the board has, the better decisions they can make to help guide staff to deliver better service for our riders. And I see William's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Cole. I just want to echo all our thanks to Cole for his leadership and also to everyone here for all the hard work we did on the, I did very little, but all the hard work you guys did on the report, so thanks so much. Also wanted to thank Director Worth for joining us, and hope that you continue to share your frank discussions with us, and also, last but not least, thank John and Jose for all their support.
All right. If there's no other business to come before the RAC, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8 o'clock. Look at us.